Greetings, Star Wars fans. Whether you come from Concord, Dawn, or Mandalore itself, my name is John Edward Lee, and I'm here with another episode of Universe-Expanding Books and Toys, the wonderful world of Star Wars animation. It has been a few months since I've done a video. A lot of that has to do with life. Since it was now over a year since I started, I'm considering this the beginning of my second season, even though I'm continuing on with the theme that I started with the animation. This isn't even the last one. I still am going to do another one. But this one in particular, ooh, really intimidating. Because what I chose to do is the next thing they brought out after the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, which was my last episode in this series, the computer animated Clone Wars series, seasons 1 through 7. This is 1 through 5. Then there was a 6th season of lost episodes after they canceled the show when Disney acquired Lucasfilm. And then, of course, they've done one more season since on Disney Plus, completing the series. Before I get into it, a couple of things as far as Star Wars collecting. I always like to give you a little idea of what it's like being a Star Wars collector, a little slice of things that I'm doing when I'm not doing these videos. One thing I was really excited about is I got one of those Darth Vader carrying cases, like the original. This is from like 1980, so this would be an Empire Strikes Back one. I never had a bunch of figures, nor did I have this case as a child, so it's really awesome to be able to fill them with figures. Here's something I never knew because I didn't have this. When you close it and lift it up and try to take it anywhere, all those figures fall out of the inside. I never knew that. I know that now. Those figures are probably going to go back on the display, and the case will be its own display. The other thing that I did recently was to put the weapons in the cabinet on my Razor Crest. This Razor Crest is an amazing, great toy, but they have this issue where they have this cabinet full of weapons. Look at all those tiny, tiny weapons. Look at these big old mitts. I can barely even fit my hand in there. This was a challenge. It turns out, after struggling for a bit, that the real secret was to put the weapons on a ballpoint pen with a little bit of poster putty and just pluck them in there. And because it has a hole in it, it went right through the pegs and it was really easy. So I was glad I found a little nerd hack there. But we're not talking about The Mandalorian. We're not talking about vintage Star Wars. We're talking about the Clone Wars, the various books, toys, and comics, and things that came around that. Now, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I don't own any of the Clone Wars animated series video games. They made a couple for the Wii. At the time they came out, I was well into my late 20s, early 30s. I just didn't, they looked like kids' games. And usually that doesn't bother me. I like kids' stuff left and right, but something about them seemed rushed. And Force Unleashed had come out, and it was just too good, and I just didn't get those games. Tell me what you thought of those games. I think it was Republic Heroes is one of them. I could be wrong. That's how, I think one was a fighting game and one was a mission game. But yeah, I never really saw it. Played those games, so I never really got them. But I definitely got a bunch of comics, books, and toys from Clone Wars. Clone Wars was something that was marketed to children at first, and then Star Wars fans as it got more serious. The first season is a little kiddie, including the movie that was in theaters that started the whole thing, which was just called The Clone Wars. Once they caught an audience, and they caught an audience pretty fast, they were able to make it more serious. But because they started with kid stuff, they definitely did a bunch of kids episodes. I don't know why I keep the stickers on there. I think because I like that I paid like less than $2 for it at a used bookstore. But they did do a few of the Clone Wars style books for young kids. These aren't picture books. I would say these are like scholastic book series, you know, age 3rd grade through 6th grade, depending. They definitely did a lot of cool stuff as far as books goes when it came out. I don't always get art books. This happened to be at a Five Below for $5. That's a store where everything's under $5. I couldn't believe it. I had to get it. The art in the Clone Wars is just astounding. The shading, One of the signature looks of the Clone Wars is that all the colors and things like that look like they're painted on. It's hard to find an example of it in this because this is basically art of it. But Zero, the Hutt, doesn't look much different than that. His colors look painted on. And a lot of the clone troopers have like smudges that look like paintbrush strokes. I always liked that because it almost looked like they were painted miniatures, like we're playing with toys. And that, of course, went away with Clone Wars. They did not do that in any of the other series besides the Clone Wars Season 7. Of course, they had to do it then. And it got lighter as it went on. In fact, the characters had like big heads at first. By Season 2, 3, they were much smaller, much meaner looking, much better animation, and it made for a better show. Not to knock the first couple of seasons of Clone Wars, there's some great stuff in there. Zillo Beast, for one. I love that they made a Star Wars Godzilla and named him the Zillo Beast. It's so on the nose. I love it. They did some books for adults, starting with a novelization of the Clone Wars series, which also had a couple of other books. I know in the UK these were easier to get in hardcover. These are some of the few paperback books in my library of novels. I'm not tracking those. They're too expensive. It would be nice to have them, but that's, one area where frugality wins over collecting. Although my collection's pretty tight, I gotta say. Not to toot my own horn. Now, they did Dark Horse was doing the Star Wars comics at the time, like they did from 1991. And they did a Clone Wars series. The first thing I'm going to show you, and I'm pretty sure I've showed this before, is almost certainly the most valuable comic that I own. It is Clone Wars #1. And it's actually kind of rare not to see this graded because people will grade it. My copy's in pretty good condition. I'm no expert. I would give this like at least an 8. But again, I'm no expert. I just know what I see other people do. It is so expensive because it is the first appearance of Ahsoka. Now, I thought the Tartakovsky cartoon series was perfect. The comic books and the books related to that Clone Wars period, which happened in real time between episode 2 and episode 3, and in the context of it, I was like, yeah, they crammed a 3-year war in there. Yeah, it totally makes sense. Asajj, Dirge, they're all connected. So when they did the movie, I was like, awesome, it's going to be like that. It's just going to be a continuation in a different style. Great. No, it wasn't. They introduced new characters. They introduced new concept. I didn't know it was going to be a series. And when I found out it was a series, I was like, oh, they're going to do a traditionally animated 2D style. No, it looks just like the movie. That floored me. That wasn't a thing that was that common with the richness that Clone Wars has. And that bled over into the comic books. In fact, I think the comic books is almost like a cross between the two. There's our 3 main characters, although sometimes they didn't appear in any episodes at all, leaving it for other characters. But here's a lot of Ahsoka. Now, this is important because it's very rare for Ahsoka to be in any comics. Clone Wars is started relatively close to the creation of the purchase from Disney, by Disney, of Lucasfilm. And so, of course, when that happened, they canceled the series. Keep that in mind. That's going to come back here in a bit. But we've seen some books. We've seen some comics. We've talked about video games. We've talked about some art books. But what we haven't talked about yet are toys. And there is a lot of them. One of the things that made this a particularly intimidating video to try to do and pull things for is I got the books, I got the comics. There are so many Clone Wars toys, and I did not collect them. I collect things from comic books, movies, blah, blah, blah. Not movies, comic books, novels, video games. I don't necessarily go for the movies and the TV show. I also collect female characters, so I have a lot of Ahsoka and a couple other characters I'm going to show you. So I didn't get a lot of Clone Wars. I also wasn't collecting at the time that it was popular. I had about an 8-year retirement and then got back into collecting when the Black Series started. So some of this stuff I actually had to go back and get as a fan afterwards, including this one. The very first Ahsoka. I think it is. I know this figure is. I know it was in 2 packages. I think this is the first of the 2, but I could be wrong. But there he is, Stinky, Jabba the Hutt's son, or daughter. I don't think they established. I think Hutts are pretty gender fluid. I think they could swap genders, in fact, or choose their own genders. Jabba the Hutt didn't have a wife, or he had that child. And of course, it comes with the backpack. Here's the thing about Ahsoka. She is the hottest, like, Star Wars character, you know, and of course I mean in popularity. Like, since she, you know, came out, there's not many characters that have reached that level. People hated her when that movie came out. Who is this kid? She's like 14 in a crop top. First off, that doesn't seem appropriate. And she's calling Anakin Snips. She's terrible. It was about half a season before everyone fell in love with Ahsoka. And of course, to come full circle, here is the Black Series Ahsoka from the end of the Clone Wars, the last season, the season that they did, season 7 for Disney Plus. And of course, she looks a lot more mature. I do have the VC Vision Vintage Collection version. So there she is. You could tell that she's grown a lot over the show. It takes place over 3 years, so I guess she went from being like 14 to 17 or 15 to 18. I don't know, you know, Togruta ages could be different, just like Yoda species. This is a re-release of her most expensive figure. I'm not going to pretend that it's the original one. It has a different back and everything. It is a, you know, retooled version. I don't know that they actually updated too much in that figure, but that's what she looked like near the end of this series. She definitely looked a lot older. And of course, there's the Clone Wars logo. So, Ahsoka's everywhere. She's not only in Clone Wars, she's in Rebels. She's got her own series coming out. She's in both Boba Fett and The Mandalorian. So there's lots of figures of her that I'm not going to show because they're from other shows, but there are a lot of them out there. Recently, within the past year and a half, these came out, which were Black Series 6-inch versions of the regular, you know, series that came out. There is ARC Trooper Echo, who of course becomes a fan favorite character. There's Clone Pilot Hawk. I wish that they had done Rex in this, because since Rex is not from comics or books or video games, I don't really have a Rex anymore. If they ever do another series of this and do Rex, I would love a Rex, but I want him. I like this because it references the Clone Wars in the packages. Even though this is not an expanded universe character, I also collect carded 6-inch figures. So here are the big boys, Anakin and Obi-Wan, as they looked in their battle gear for most of the series. Anakin being knighted just before the series begins, or after episode 2, after a little bit of the Clone Wars, actually. Like a couple months, he just does so well. There's General Kenobi in that series as well. Now, I'd love to have a General Grievous, but what's the point? They brought up that Tartakovsky General Grievous, and it was just so good. I don't really collect clones either, or stormtroopers or anything like that. They're just all the same character. People love them. I don't really want to collect the same figure over and over again just because it is different paint. So I have one clone, and that is Ahsoka's clone. The 332nd, they paint their helmets to honor Ahsoka, who at that point had left the Jedi Order and was sort of a renegade. It's got the 501st, like blue, like, you know, it's Anakin's clone troopers eventually have. It's just too cool. It's associated with Ahsoka. I love Ahsoka. She's one of my favorite characters. I had to have him. From those final seasons, there were a couple of Mandalorians. Mandalore was a huge deal in the Clone Wars. It was the first time we saw Mandalore, and if you go back and watch those episodes, the elements in the architecture are built of different parts of Boba Fett's armor, because he was the original Mandalorian armor. You know, it's where we first heard the word, so we associate it with him. But the little diamond on his chest and the plate is in the windows. It's really, actually, the ships look like the swooshes on the side of his helmet. Like, it's really, really well done. Go back and watch those episodes. But I had to have Darth Maul's Mandalorian, and that'll come up here in a bit when I get to a couple other things I want to talk about. The Mandalorian loyalists were also in Clone Wars. I can't help it. I like Mandalorians, so I got an extra one. I don't even have the Mandalorian right now besides the credit collection one because it's a carded figure. So I actually have more of those random Mandalorians than the Mandalorian. A couple characters who showed up this one showed up in episode 1 for half a second, Aura Singh, but you could see they advertised the heck out of it. This was kind of the main Clone Wars line when they really got going. Aura Singh, who makes who's a big deal in the Clone Wars because she trains Boba Fett, young Boba Fett, who 14-ish, 15-ish. He's been in prison as like a teenager. It's crazy. But there's the 6-inch figure. Now, if you have not noticed behind me, I've got a few figures here. There's Ahsoka, if you can see her. Yep. Asajj, Aura Singh, Amidala, and Ayla Secura. If you know anything about me, I have this obsession with this group I call the A-Team, which are those characters in this A-frame shape. They're all Clone Wars characters. I have figures for all these characters I'm going to show you, except for Ayla Secura. She didn't really play a big part in the Clone Wars. Nothing that looked unique enough that they felt like they need to make a figure for her. Another huge character from the Clone Wars is Hondo Ohnaka. Everyone loves this guy. First off, he comes with a Quackian monkey lizard. Who doesn't love that? Second, he's voiced by not Alan Cumming, Jim Cummings, who you will also know as the voice of Tigger, Winnie the Pooh. He was Darkwing Duck. He was Don Carnage. He is a lot of characters that you know and love. He was Peg-Leg Pete on DuckTales, and then ever since, he is everywhere. And the fact that he got to be a Star Wars character and one as fun, just like Ahsoka, he has also shown up in other shows. So much so that when they brought out his vintage collection figure, this doesn't say Clone Wars. It doesn't say Galaxy's Edge, which he's a part of. It says Star Wars. He's just a Star Wars character because he's that prevalent. I would love to see a Ahsoka figure like that. I'm pretty sure all the Ahsoka figures that they've released so far say what show it's from. Alright, so another character who came out of Clone Wars is Embo. I like this guy. He's a bounty hunter. He does count as an EU character because he shows up in the Aftermath trilogy. But that big old hat, he looks like he's like right out of a Kurosawa movie. It's perfect. The only problem with that figure is I wish it had his dog. His dog is cool. But I had to have that figure just because I love that character. Now, a character that I love from the old Clone Wars, the comic book series Republic, of which I am wearing a t-shirt of one of the covers, even though it has nothing to do with the Clone Wars cartoon series. It does bleed over, and this is a good one. Quinlan Vos, one of my favorite Jedi, Jedi Guardian. He's got the ability to touch an item and read its history, as well as his Jedi powers. That ability, telemetry? No, I'm going to mess it up. I'm not even going to try. Anyways, I'm not going to try. That power is from his people, not from Jedi, so he's got extra powers. He only is one episode of Clone Wars, but I'm very glad they made a figure of him. He was to be in more episodes, which again will come up shortly when I talk about a couple other things, but that didn't happen. So we only got the one episode with Quinlan Vos, which is a shame. One of my favorite characters, a totally cool guy. It plays both sides, you know, skirts the dark side. I mean, he's really cool, and I wish more people knew him. If you watched Kenobi, they mentioned his name. I fell out of my chair. I was hoping he would show up. He didn't. There's still a lot of live action and animated stuff to go. He survived Order 66. And I know this because there's an issue of the Darth Vader Marvel comic, which is down on the bottom. That's why I'm pointing that way, like you know. Anyways, where they have a list of people who survived Order 66, and he is on that list. So he at least survived Order 66. I really want to know what he's been up to. A character, this is technically not a Clone Wars figure, but the character looks exactly the same. Bo-Katan, is it Kryze? Yeah. Who is the rightful heir to Mandalore, the sister of Satine, who was an ex-young girlfriend of Obi-Wan's, I've always found that relationship interesting. She's the leader of Mandalore. She had this relationship with Obi-Wan when she was a child, even though he's not supposed to have relationships. They have mentioned it briefly in books, but man, I want that book. I want that book real bad. How they like met when they were really young and how that worked out and how they grew apart. But I'd also like a book about her and her sister. They're really cool characters. I want her to get the Darksaber really, really, really bad, but that would mean she would either have to battle the Mandalore, Din Djarin, to get it, or someone would have to beat him to get it, and then she would have to beat them, which seems more likely. Speaking of Mandalorian characters that are originally from the Clone Wars, Cad Bane, everyone loves this guy. This is the only Cad Bane figure I own, I believe. I need to get one in that Clone Wars series like the Aurra Sing and the Quinlan Vos. But I do have another Cad Bane coming. I can't remember if he's from the last season of... I don't know if that figure that's coming out is from Rebels or Mandalorian. I think it's Rebels, but he did show up in both. So I wanted to showcase some of the characters that were ever present in Clone Wars and then went off to other things. This lady did not go past Clone Wars, and it makes me so sad because she's one of my favorites. A member of my A-team, Asajj Ventress. She always makes an impressive figure. Those crossed lightsabers in the package and her little hologram of Count Dooku, her master, who would eventually betray her and toss her aside so that she becomes a bounty hunter. More on that in a second. And there's the Black Series 6-inch version of her. It's an amazing figure. I love that character. I love the look. I love it's the flowing dress and the two lightsabers. She's like a dancer. And at the same time, there's a scene in the Clone Wars series where she pulls a clone trooper to her, runs him through, and then kisses him as he dies. It is insane, but that's exactly who she is. I love that she fake flirts with Obi-Wan, where they like have this like flirt, but they really hate each other. It's really good. They have fought alongside each other. These two aren't really at all Clone War figure. Well, this one is. This one's not. Padme, another member of my A-team. That's just for her from Attack of the Clones. The only Padme figure for Black Series. There's no character with more costumes than Padme. When you consider all the Queen Amidala stuff and all of her costumes through everything, Snow Bunny Padme, Clone Wars Padme, there's just a lot. But yet this is the only one that we have. That needs to change. This is how Padme looked through most of the Clone Wars. And I got this figure specifically because there is did I pull it? Oh, just pull it live, huh? No, I think I did pull it. She's in a Thrawn novel in that costume. That's why I pulled it. The last figure I have to show before I get into new canon stuff is Darth Maul. And there he is with his robot legs. He shows up in the Clone Wars as well and is a big deal. And just like the other characters, he bleeds into other things. I'd love to see him show up in more stuff. Of course, he showed up at the end of Solo, much older. That story is yet to be told. Bring that book, comic, or movie, or maybe the Lando live-action series. That Darth Maul is cool. I have no reason to get this figure. It's not an expanded universe character or anything. I just love that figure. I love that look. I love that last season. Speaking of Maul, this is a series of short stories that were abandoned concepts from Revenge of the Sith. One of which was the idea of Darth Maul tracking down Obi-Wan on Tatooine in these robot legs, and it just looks crazy. That was a non-canon book. It was not meant to be... I can't believe this is not a comic book. Why did I do that? I'm going to hurt my binding. Anyways, it was so popular that, of course, you got a figure. That's right here. This is for that. Comes with Uncle Owen, and there he is in his robot legs. And then, of course, he had different robot legs as it went along. So they canceled Clone Wars because Disney bought them, and they weren't going to be making stuff for Cartoon Network. They don't own that. So that's why Rebels came around, which turned out to be great. But there were a couple of things that happened with the scripts and the unaired episodes. And one of them is this. Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir. This is the last series that Dark Horse did, and it was in a very limited print. These, you can get a Marvel version of these, but these Dark Horse ones are a lot harder to find because of the limited run. One of the few issues I don't have is a free comic book day from Asajj Opress, who should be in this video. He's a great character from it, but I just don't have any figures of him. I didn't get that one, and now it's just really hard to track down. And there's the last episode with Mother Talzin, who needs a 6-inch figure. I love that character. I would love a lot more Night Sisters, including Asajj Ventress in her Night Sister outfit. That series is very good. You can find it. It is the only comic book series before the purchase that counts as new canon. Another one that they did is this book, Dark Disciple, based on, and these are based on both on 4-parters. I think that's 4 issues, in fact. Yeah, 4 issues. This was going to be a 4-parter involving Asajj Ventress, with hair now, because she doesn't feel the need to grow it, and Quinlan Vos. These are going to be 4 episodes about these two teaming up to go after Dooku as bounty hunters, or he posing as a bounty hunter, and they kind of fall in love. 2 of my favorite characters. They were in the Republic comic book all the time, never crossed paths, but they were going to cross paths in these Clone Wars episodes, and I tell you, they would have been written by Katie Lucas, George Lucas's daughter, who wrote all the Maul episodes, a lot of the best Clone Wars stuff. But they did bring this book out, and it's by far one of my favorite books. It captures the story perfectly, gives me all the Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress I could want. Christy Golden is one of my favorite writers. Her stuff is amazing. They did do an Ahsoka YA novel that is sort of more of a bridge between Clone Wars and Rebels, tells what she's doing, but the first page starts at the Siege of Mandalore, which is the last episode of the Clone Wars. So you'd think that's done, right? You know, I mean, Disney bought it, they never touched the stuff again. No, the Clone Wars series counts as canon. The movies, the Clone Wars series, Son of Dathomir, and everything made after that are all canon. So it couldn't help but stain, not stain's not the word, like delightfully stain, like colorfully and beautifully stain the rest of Star Wars. And that bleeds over into new canon. So, new canon, they've done a couple things. They did a series called Age of Republic, which was just about different characters during the time. Now, these, you know, could be any, you know, this is just from the movies. These characters, you know, they don't, not necessarily specifically from Clone Wars, but they do have characters from the Clone Wars in it. Rex, Asajj Ventress, one of her very, very few comic book appearances. It's sort of, you know, you could tell it's influenced, you know, the whole thing is now influenced by this series because it was so great. Marvel hasn't done much besides that with it, but IDW has done a lot. They have the Forces of Destiny series, which involved characters. I love this because it almost looks like a cross between the Tartakovsky and the Clone Wars CGI. Return to Vader's Castle, which is very much like Tales from the Crypt, and there is the original robot Maul from Clone Wars with his robot legs. Asajj Ventress shows up in that. And then right about the end, before IDW stopped, they did a series called Clone Wars Battle Tales, which very much so has the look of the Clone Wars series, but I think it also captures the Tartakovsky style as well, even though that series is no longer canon. And then there's the last one. Star Wars Adventures, which was their main series, they went all over the place. They went every era. The whole thing was one of the Graf kids, who's in some other books. I'm not going to get into their history at this video because I'm already running almost at a half hour and I want to keep it tight. But he told stories from all the eras. So they had a lot of Clone Wars era stuff, like Anakin and Padme. That's a 2-parter with them, battle droids and everything. I mean, that droid with the rabbit ears, I can never remember his name. He's clearly from Clone Wars. You know, definitely has the clone look of the Clone Wars. That Yoda is very specifically Clone Wars. He doesn't look like that in anything else. Not the movies, not Rebels, not nothing. And there's that Darth Maul and his, like, more slender robot legs from that vintage collection figure. That's pretty much all it is, all they have for comic books as far as the Clone Wars. This is what I was talking about earlier. Thrawn Alliances. I want to say, did I get the one with the fold-out poster? Yeah, there it is. there's Padme in this book, which takes place during the Clone Wars, or through a flashback, in that outfit from that figure that I showed a few minutes ago. So that's why I have that figure. There have been some short stories anthology. This clearly you couldn't not say this is based on the Clone Wars. It definitely is. I mean, there's all the people I've talked about already. They also did Jedi and Sith, which could be anywhere, but I mean, clearly there's a Clone Wars influence on that back. Both the art on these are amazing. Just last month, or the month before that, they released Brotherhood, which is about, that line on in one of the movies where they're like, that business on Cato Nemoidia doesn't count, when they're talking about times Anakin saved Obi-Wan. It's like they wrote a whole book based on that. But it takes place squarely in the world of the Clone Wars and makes references to it. The last book I'm going to show is this one, Lords of the Sith. Wait, Darth Vader, Emperor, that's not in Clone Wars. I bring this because, and there's no figure of him, unfortunately, because the main character, and they don't advertise it at all, is Cham Syndulla, the Twi'lek rebel leader from his planet Ryloth, the father of Hera Syndulla. If you want to see more of him, read this book. It is amazing. He's a good character in it, but I'm going to say he gets run through he goes through a lot. And one of the first books that, came out after Disney purchased it. So it definitely has some Clone Wars influence on it. Well, as intimidating as it was for me to do this, and I clocked this in at just over a half an hour, that is the Clone Wars. That is what I have as far as books, comics, and toys. They're always going to be making more. They're making those, Action Fleet micro galaxy Action Fleet size figures. I expect to see some vehicles from that come out. Clone Wars had some of the greatest vehicles, and I couldn't represent that because they haven't made a lot of them. They have made some, but as I said, I wasn't collecting them at the time, nor would I think I would get them at that scale. They're too expensive. When they're small, easier to collect, easier to display, easier to buy. That's it. That's all I have for the Clone Wars. We will return with another episode, which is going to finish it out. That's going to be Rebels, Bad Batch, and Star Wars Resistance. I can't forget that. It's a very overlooked series. And Star Wars Visions. There's a little bit of stuff for that. Not a lot of merchandise, but there is a book. So we'll talk about that as well. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is John Edward Lee, and remember that the Force will be with you always.